Od 2007 roku polscy producenci animacji uzyskali dofinansowanie z programu na 17 projektów w kwocie bliskiej 1 100 000 euro. Mając również na uwadze wysoką jakość i konkurencyjność polskich filmów animowanych, zdecydowałyśmy, aby tym razem zorganizować wydarzenie kierowane w pierwszej kolejności właśnie do tej grupy odbiorców. Również Komisja Europejska zauważa istotną rolę i duże znaczenie rynku animacji na mapie filmowej Europy. W związku z tym zadecydowała i zleciła badanie rynku animacji i przygotowanie raportu na ten temat Europejskiemu Obserwatorium Audiowizualnemu. Raport ten będzie dostępny jeszcze w tym miesiącu. Do udziału w seminarium zaprosiłyśmy europejskich ekspertów, a co najważniejsze praktyków z dziedzin budowania marki, strategii rozwoju firmy, merchandisingu i adaptacji. Mimo że chciałyśmy zorganizować wydarzenie kierowane w pierwszej kolejności do producentów filmów animowanych i seriali, mamy nadzieję, że te tematy są również istotne dla większego grona odbiorców. Seminarium poprowadzi producentka Human Arc, współzałożycielka Stowarzyszenia Producentów Polskiej Animacji, autorka jednej z najlepiej przygotowanych i najwyżej ocenionych aplikacji do programu Media, Ania Sosic.
Dziękuję. Dzień dobry, witam wszystkich. Hello everybody. So we'll have to switch to English now so that our guests can follow. It's my big pleasure to guide you through 2 days full of lectures by great guests from all over Europe, everything about the topic of the business of animation. Today we will have 3 lectures. First by Ollie Hyatt from Blue Zoo from the UK. Then we'll have a coffee break. Then Isabelle Fauvel from France will be with us. And after the lunch break, Lars Christiansen from Denmark. And after that, we're going to watch the film Ted, The Lost Explorer, whose producer Nico is with us, and he will speak tomorrow. So yeah, I'm very much looking forward to these 2 days with all of you. We will start with Ollie, and I would like to encourage you to not wait with your questions, but just raise your hand. I mean, we kind of not all know each other, but I see a lot of familiar faces here, which is nice. I see also a lot of new faces, and be in interaction with us, please. It's great that you're all here, that you're eager to learn, to broaden your horizon, and to pick the brains of our guests. Now I hand over to Ollie from Blue Zoo, an animation studio in the UK, who will tell us how the studio grew over the past years and a lot of stories around that. I think it started as a bunch of friends 15 years ago, and now Blue Zoo is one of the biggest studios of the UK. So I'm very curious to learn more about that. Ollie.
Thank you. First of all, I'd like to say thank you for having me at Creative Europe. We have a referendum next year in the UK, so if we vote out, then this could be the last event we're invited to, maybe. I don't know. So it's good to be here. Blue Zoo, we started 15 years ago, and probably the reason I get asked to talk at these events is about 8 years ago, I started a organisation called Animation UK to help represent UK animators and push our cause to the government that we're surrounded by territories that get incentives and tax breaks and funds for animation, and the UK didn't get any. So slowly and surely, all the business was leaving the UK, and there was absolutely nothing we could do about it. For that work, I got an MBE from the Queen, which is like a medal. When I went to the palace to collect it, it was me and about 40 soldiers who'd all dragged people with bullet wounds out of ditches. And so when they asked me what I do, I draw pictures, I said. So it's nice to be recognised for that work. And I don't usually like to mention it, but as I'm the first speaker, I thought I ought to sound important. my day job is running one of the largest animation studios in the UK. And when I was asked to talk about and find a title for what I was going to talk about today, it wasn't easy to find one. And just thinking about, I hadn't really thought about it, but we've been going 15 years. And to have to think about how we got there from a few people sat in a bar at Bournemouth University in the UK made me think long and hard about our successes and how it got there. So I called it Growing Your Business One Frame at a Time. And it's the best description of how I think we've grown and a reflection on our business philosophy. And I'm going to talk about company growth, but I'm also going to talk about how our growth has been enabled or affected by the UK media environment and the tax break that we fought so hard to get. An animation company is not a get-rich-quick business. It's a fun business with a possible route to wealth. But if you want to get rich, go into banking. By get into banking, I mean work as an investment banker or break into a bank and steal its contents. Both of these are much quicker routes to wealth. Animation is an art form and should be treated as such. And any long-term wealth in animation business can only be achieved from some retention of IP. And even then, it's a lottery as to which IP will catch fire and which will just move along nicely. But with IP retention, at least you've bought a ticket for that lottery. Don't get me wrong, you can trickle along nicely, making stuff for other people, adverts and commercials, and you can earn a good living and pay your bills. But creating a business with value is very hard to do. Which means that salaries that you can pay your staff have to be reflective of an arts business. And it's a constant battle between budgets you can get given and the people you're trying to employ. So we did a staff survey just last month, and even our staff are in turmoil about exactly why they're in the business. So we got the following bits of feedback. Can we turn down more of the long-form work-for-hire jobs so we can work on more fulfilling artistic jobs? Animation is not all about money. So that was one bit of feedback we got as a company. We also got, can we ask for more money for the jobs we do so we can pay better salaries? So one comment saying, it's not about the money, we should be wanting to do artistic jobs, and one saying, please can we ask for more money? Ironically, those two bits of feedback came from the same person, which just blows your mind. So somehow we have to balance those two things off. And I'll talk a bit later about how we try and balance the salary versus artistic nature of the business. Before I do that, of course, I haven't really even told you who Blue Zoo are. So I've used some crazy effects. They're not going to work now. Ooh, a fade through. Is it going to go on? Okay, so who are Blue Zoo? We're a 15-year-old team of animators, and we try to have fun. So we have artists, animators, directors, producers, admin, coders, all based in one building in central London. We vary in size from year to year, from about 80 people to 150 people, depending on what projects we have on. These can be full-timers or they can be freelance staff. We have staff from all over Europe and beyond. We're very management light, and we carry as little overhead as possible. So Adam, Tom, and myself, who set up the company 15 years ago, still directly work on projects, and if required, could step on and animate, comp, or direct on any of the many shows or shorts we have going through the studio. We produce a range of styles. I'm going to just flick on so I'll show you. We produce a range of styles for all types of platforms, all shapes and sizes for TV, online, film, mobile, emerging platforms like VR, all in our studio in London. The one thing that we say about our studio, we try and find our unique selling point, is that we're a boutique character animation studio. So most of the work we do features characters, which much animation is, but some people more into their graphics. The title was Building Your Business a Frame at a Time. And what I mean by that is slow and consistent growth. So we're not the sort of company that would start up from scratch and suddenly have sort of a £30 million film going through the studio. We've always built our company very slowly, and I can show you that in a nice graph. When we set up in just after 2000, through to where we are now. We've, at different points along this line, been offered bigger jobs or not, I was going to say better, but bigger jobs in terms of we would need more animators. Sometimes we turn jobs down because they weren't artistically fulfilling. Sometimes we turn them down because we worry that we would overstretch ourselves and not deliver on quality. One of the most important things in this industry, it's a very, very small industry, both within the UK and worldwide. And if you do one bad job or deliver really late on one project or piss one person off, then everyone gets to hear about it. So we've kept our growth. This is steady compared with some people. We all see often in Asia, suddenly a studio goes from no people to 600 people in a week, and so I consider this slow, steady growth. If any of you are in any doubt about what effect a government intervention can have on a business, you can probably see the year that it kicked in. It was there. So when you guys are looking to lobby your government for support, there's some very useful information. Our industry doubled in size over 3 years, and our industry has never been so buoyant. We're now actually getting wage inflation because we've got a shortage of talent. But that's the effect animation tax credit can have. I quickly want to talk about the quality of work as well. We see some studios, some countries with tax credits, I don't know if you know what I mean by farming the tax credit. So I go and meet them in Cannes, and I go and sit in a little white room with no pictures on the wall, and they get out their big folder of, I'm not going to name the countries, of tax incentives. So there's a man in a suit going, well, if you work in this state, or if you work here, and you can get 50% of your budget from here. And that doesn't interest me in a way, because I still want it to be about the creative. And the level that the UK have pitched their tax credit at means that you're not going to get people entering the business who just want to make money and farm those tax credits, because it's not a good enough incentive for that. But what it means is if you work hard and do good stuff, you can make animation. So the people who are creative and trying to drive projects are starting to get their shows made and starting to make some money. In our final year, we got this machine, which had a silicon graphics card and Maya software, which all of a sudden changed it from being a very physics and maths-based course to being something more creative. I mean, the specs on the machines were still really, really low compared with today, but to me it felt like creative freedom. And the changing in technology over time is, and it's still changing now, but the really exciting thing in 2000, suddenly they reduced the cost of Maya right down. I think it dropped 3/4 in price, which enabled small startup companies like mine to set up. Also, cost of hardware was getting cheaper, so that really helped us as well. At the time, because there were no other courses and there wasn't really an internet, in our little bubble in Bournemouth, we couldn't see what the rest of the world was doing like you can now. And we couldn't see what even anyone else in the UK was doing for courses. So all we had to compare ourselves was the year above. And we were ferociously competitive, outdoing what the year above had done and also what our colleagues had been doing. We used to, at the time, we didn't have a render farm, so you could only render on your machines, and there wasn't enough machines for everybody on the course, so you had to share with someone. So what you would do is you would come into the college at 6 in the morning, sit yourself on that computer and camp there all day while you worked, and then sleep at your desk while your computer rendered. At one point, the health and safety people from the university came and shut our lab down because people were actually building little beds around their computers to make sure the other person couldn't come and log on. So that's sort of how competitive we were. And thankfully, times have changed. People at universities now have their own computers. Everyone has a computer. Everyone can do animation. And that's the same sort of all around the world. So there's more competition because more people can have entry-level animation. So therefore, it all becomes about what you can do with those tools. And that's the really exciting thing for me. All around the world, you're now competing on a more level playing field, and people can basically do what they want from a home computer almost. Like I say, though, we worked absolutely crazy hours at Bournemouth. And again, this is a work ethic that's stayed with us ever since. And I think if you want to get into animation or you want to grow your business, I think all of us here would recognize that you have to work very, very long hours. Why did we start a business? Well, while at university, we had an inspiring lecture from some ex-students. Their showreel was rubbish. They presented really badly. They seemed to have very little business skill. In fact, they found it funny. They'd drawn some willies on one of their slides as a joke. And why were they so inspiring? Well, they seemed to have everything stacked against them. Their showreel was crap. They seemed like really strange people, but they were making money. And I thought, well, if they can make money, surely we could. We had a particularly strong year at Bournemouth, and many of our year are now lead effects artists, mocap technicians, and games in Soho in London. So we called a meeting of our year, which was about 40 people, and we asked if anyone would be interested in setting up a business. About 50% of the people were interested, and then we had to do interviews with our fellow classmates, which was a bit weird. But we formed a small team that would be Blue Zoo. And the good thing was, it wasn't my friends. It wasn't necessarily my friendship group. So one lad who I didn't really speak to at all, and then another guy who I knew quite well. They definitely weren't, selected because they were my friends. They had very particular skills. Here we are at our graduation, the start of our company. By this point, we'd decided to set up, and we'd got a website and a name. Adam, who you can see on the left, he has developed into one of the most respected and award-winning animation directors in our industry. He is the sort of guy that is so focused, which you obviously need to be for animation, that you can ask him a question at 9 a.m., he'll have his head down working, and then about 2 o'clock in the afternoon, he'll turn and give you an answer. He's that focused and very creative. Tom, he comes from a family of architects and designers, and he has a keen graphic eye. So he runs the services department, which does more sort of graphic-y work or commercials. He's also a complete computer geek, and for years he has saved us thousands and thousands of pounds by building all our computers and systems from scratch. Having complete control of that side of things, that when something goes wrong, you don't have to call on someone else, is just a godsend. And we considered cloud-based rendering a little while ago, but Tom's got our systems working so well that I just don't think it can compete at the moment. Nicola, on the end, she was one of the people that started it, but she emigrated to Australia because she fell in love with an Australian, and she left quite quickly after about 2 years. I have to say, actually, it became easier when there were 3 people rather than 4. There were a lot of arguments when there are 4 people, because you can have a split vote, 2 either side, and then how do you make a decision? Or it would be 3 versus 1, and then it felt like someone was ganged up on. When there's 3 of you and you all completely trust each other, there's always a result, there's always an answer, you can always move forward. And most of the time, because I would say I'm the risk taker, most of the time I lose in the arguments. So I go home, have a creative paddy, and then come in the next day and just start again, because I implicitly trust the people I work with, which is great, and that hasn't changed for 15 years. Forming the company is obviously not even half the battle, not even 10% of the battle. We still needed more things, so importantly, money to start the company. And for 4 students with all their student debts, it was never going to come from a bank. I did ask, and they laughed at me. And again, we had a really small student showreel, and we had no contacts. We'd never worked in the industry before, so it was going to be very hard. So what did we do for investment in a startup business? Well, we wrote a business plan. It was like that long, and it was awfully written. But the one thing I've always found with investment, and I still find it to this day, if you ask enough people with enough money, someone will be stupid enough to say yes. I mean, I obviously mean astute enough to say yes. So long as you have passion, drive, and talent. Not all business ideas will succeed, but it's worth taking a punt on people with passion, drive, and talent. And that's not to say that we didn't have a plan. We did have a plan. The year we graduated, as I say, software and hardware costs plummeted. And the same year, Freeview and all the dedicated children's channels that followed suddenly came into fruition. So we guessed that they'd suddenly need a lot of content, and they would need it fast, and they would need it cheap to fill up all the hours they had. And we were proved right over the years. So we found a guy, an investor, through a friend of a friend of a friend. He'd made a lot of money selling hats to Disney, so he thought he was already in the animation business. And he took a punt on us, and he invested 60K as a long-term loan, 30 which was cash in hand, and the other 30 was securing a 30 grand overdraft. Also in the early days, he provided us with some bookkeeping. He had got one of his staff to do the bookkeeping for us. To today's standards, it was very amateurish, but at the time served us well. So when I say there's no get-rich-quick game in animation, I do believe if you're prudent and you produce top work and work hard, you can grow a business that has good returns for everyone. So I'm going to share with you some figures. Okay, so this is our investor. This is how it panned out for him from the beginning. The figures on the left are in pounds. As you can see over the year, and again, you can see where the tax credit kicked in. Absolutely, for anyone who wants to lobby the government, that's where the tax credit kicked in, so more profits, so he got return. So he actually got an average annual return, if you average all that out, of 15% a year on his investment, which is good by any standards. However, if you add in the uplift of his share value, because we now retain IP in the company, which has a value, we got valued by the HMRC for tax purposes this year, and so he has had an average of 103% a year. So if you take account, and that is a good investment. We're currently going to try and buy him out, but he just sees that investment going up every year, and it's going to get trickier and trickier. So that is a huge return. That's every single year he's made 103% on his initial investment, which he actually, because of the profits we're making, he managed to take off his bank guarantee and take back his 30 grand within 3 years. So he had no risk in it from 3 years, and he still makes all that money. So there is money to be made in animation. He did as well, he lent us a little room. This is a room he used to store hats in. There's Adam working hard on one of our first shows 15 years ago, but he genuinely used to store his hats in here, and he let us have this room for it. There's me checking the football results with a lot more hair than I've got now. So that's how we started, in a tiny room. The camera's up against the wall on the left, so it was tiny, put the computers together ourselves, and didn't really pay ourselves a salary for the first year. So we started small and have grown from that point. The second thing we needed were jobs. So we had the money, we had a premises, we had a show reel, we needed jobs. And as much as you can have drive and talent and passion and work hard, I think a lot of the business is to do with chance encounters and luck. So we just happened to meet the BBC's Kay Bembo and Claire Bradley at our degree show. So everyone goes, presents their work, and prospective employers come in. The BBC came and said, can the university help us make a lot of content cheaply? The universities aren't allowed to, because their software then becomes commercial, they have to pay more money for it. And we were all there in our cute Blue Zoo t-shirts, and they said, these guys will help you. So we chanced meeting with them, and our first job, which was Blue Cow, sprung from that. So there's Blue Cow there. Originally, they wanted us to produce one as a test, which we did. They then commissioned 6. They then considered it was part of a magazine show. They then considered it the best part of the magazine show. And over the years, we made about 360 Blue Cow episodes. We were that poor starting up that we couldn't, I had to do the guide voiceovers for it, and we couldn't afford headphones for the studio. So every day at work for 2 years, I had my voice coming out of 4 different machines around me. You can imagine how bad that was. By working on Blue Cow, we worked ridiculously long hours. And so when I say that you need luck, again, working hard brings you more luck. And when I say our company has grown slowly and organically, there was definitely periods of when it was just a hard slog. So we thought the industry was easy. We did this show for about 2.5, 3 years, and we picked up bits and bobs of other work. And we were working hard, but we thought, oh, this industry is really easy. And then all of a sudden, this series came to an end, and we suddenly realized how hard it can be because we hadn't really planned anything else. And so in our third year, we spent a year doing the long, hard slog of cold calling, knocking on closed doors, sending show reels. It was a very, very hard year, but it's always, from that point on, we've always kind of understood that we need to get ahead of ourselves and we need to be planning projects for 2 or 3 years ahead and keeping many irons in the fire. From this show, which got nominated for a BAFTA all those years ago, we gradually picked up work for other studios, and we picked up work with Disney and Nickelodeon. Again, we were working, I would say, cheaper than their regular sources, but we were also reliable and producing high quality. Here you can see a selection of projects we did. I think this is within the first 5 years of setting up our company. Some adverts, some graphics, and then we're just starting to get into our own IP. How did we get into our own IP? So after about 4 years, we kept getting asked from Nickelodeon, or we need a short for this, we need a 1-minute promo for this. And they trusted us so much, they just said, do your own ideas. And as an animator, that brings me joy. So to start off with, we just did our own ideas, and we gave them to Nickelodeon, and they paid us some money for it, and they started showing them, and that's joyful. But eventually, we kind of went, well, hang on, we're just giving away our ideas. So we said to them, do you mind if we retain the IP and sell you them as bigger ideas? And the first show that worked for was a thing called Those Scurvy Rascals, which you can see going on behind me. You can still find the show online. It's a lovely series. It's about pirates, but they don't want to steal treasure. They just want to steal your underwear. So they go into space. They go underwater. They go inside computers. They go everywhere to find underpants. We were commissioned to make a pilot, which lost us money. Nickelodeon then said they would fund 6 further episodes. We took our pilot to a company called Intara at the time, and they invested to make a series of 26 of those. The 26 went out on Nickelodeon in the UK. Some of them were a little bit risque, and a few of them got banned when they went to America, which is always great if someone bans something. I like it. Everyone should aim to get at least a couple of their episodes banned in America every year. The show was nominated for a BAFTA and won a British Animation Award. And something happened on this show that will never happen for us again, and I don't think it happens for anyone anymore. At the start of the project, they had the pilot. They gave us the money. We made the entire series without showing them anything. And at the end, they signed it off. And so I got to basically go out on a whim and do all my wonderful animation fantasy. I did homages to lots of stuff. I went out on a complete whim. And the UK, to be fair, showed them all. And as I say, America only banned a couple. So my ideas can't have been that bad. But that'll never happen again now. There's so much pressure put on from TV studios to make sure everything is absolutely perfect for children. And I think actually that's sometimes at the detriment to the quality of shows. Scurvy Rascals they liked so much and was so successful. We then made another series off the back of that. This was a series of shorts. It was intended to go into long form, but we never quite got there with it. It was quite expensive at the time. But the next show was a thing called Stitch Up Showdown. Again, you can still find it on Nickelodeon and also online. It's well worth watching. They're quite old school cartooning fun. That was us on our starting to get into IP. Now, for both of these shows, because we were a small company with no money, we completely struggled to retain many of the rights. In fact, we gave away all the copyright and we retained a little bit of back end. And I can honestly say we've never seen a penny back. So apart from the production budget, we've never seen a penny of any profit, which means one of two things. One, they weren't successful enough to make money, which is probably true. But also, once you get control of your own IP, and once you can sell it yourself, and once you can control it, there's a much easier route to money. It's very easy to hide profits from a show so that your producers don't get any money back. So where you can, control your IP. So we were still a small company, but we were beginning to pick up bigger and bigger projects, so we knew we had to move offices from our little box room. And again, as a growing company, we did everything ourselves. So here's a picture of me with our current offices. Slightly less hair than the first picture, but more hair than I've got now. So we got an old rundown office, and we completely did it up ourselves. So we had to move in there when it was only half done, so it wasn't much better looking than that when we moved in. So we all had to sit on one half of the room while they put the floor down on the right-hand side. And we had to move all over to the right. And actually, we got a load of building dust in our computers, which broke them. So it was actually not a cost-saving exercise. But again, we did everything ourselves. We moved all the computers ourselves just to save money and keep building the company slowly. We tried to create a good working environment, but what I would say is we're not an advertising agency. We try and make it creative, but we don't have fountains in our reception. What people want with animation is good value. They don't necessarily want to come around and see a beautiful, beautiful studio. So you have to make it as nice as possible for your staff working there without spending too much money. You saw the growth in profits over the years. This is the growth in jobs. So here are a small handful of projects we made. This is broadly up to about 2008, 2009. Here we're starting to develop and pitch shows at Cartoon Forum. We're starting to expand our client base broader than just children's, although most of those images are just children's. And then here's the work we were doing till 2012. Again, getting into some 3D stuff. The Cineworld thing was done in stereoscopic, so we were playing with 3D for cinema. We were doing a bit more live action and comping. You can see at the bottom there, that was a puppeting show that we did all the backgrounds for. And still trying to do a massive range of styles. We decided very early on that we didn't want to be Aardman and just have one style with goggly eyes that you have to make forever. We wanted to work with different illustrators, produce different styles, so long as it fitted with our mantra of being characters and character animation. We would pretty much do anything. One thing we've seen the rise of really recently is high-paying commercial work. So the DHL little man you can see in the middle there, they spend thousands and thousands of pounds every year producing stuff, because they're such a worldwide brand, producing animated content that helps sell their messages and sell how they work things into their staff. So we've really noticed a lot more ambition for people in the corporate world, and it's not as uncreative as it used to be. So there is very, very good business made out of commercial work. And then this is where we're sort of up to now. So as we grew, we split our company into different departments. So we split into two departments. One I call services, which again, dealing with commercials, work for hire, corporate work, and one dealing with the long-running series. So either our own IP or work for hire IP for people like the BBC. The reason we split it was we were finding it difficult to apportion staff. So occasionally I'd go and grab some staff that were working on one of the long-running shows, and they'd occasionally grab my staff. So by splitting it all out and having guaranteed people on projects, it became sort of much easier to manage the staffing flow. I'm going to show you a little graph now of how our business is split at the moment and how we want to split it in the future. We've seen TV series, ads and branding, content, IP and development, interactive. We try and split these out into their own sort of subgroups at work, and we have little teams working on each of those things. So for TV series, when we're developing a TV series, this is Miffy. This job came to us just because of the tax credit. They came to us 1 week and said, would you like to do it? How much money can we save for your tax credit? We told them 2 weeks later we'd got the job, and that's never happened to us. You know, usually it's like a 5-year slog to find money. It took 2 weeks, and that shows the benefit of what a tax credit can do. But for us, when we're developing our own shows, I'm just going to play a bit of it while I talk. We have strong regional broadcasters, so when I'm coming up with a new project idea, I always, even though other people from around Europe might be wanting to get on board with my idea, I always lock down who my UK partner is first. Why do I do that? Well, number one, it means that your own country has confidence in you. If your own country doesn't want your stuff, why would any other country? But what it also means in the UK is that they usually fill a good chunk of your budget. When I say good, that can be anywhere from 20% to 30% of your budget. You add on to that the tax credit, and you've almost got half your budget right there from your own country, which makes it much easier to then sell in to other countries. There's more opportunity than ever with TV, or what I call broadcast content, the rise of YouTube producing content, Amazons of this world coming in. They are paying proper money for content. The only thing you have to be careful of is their contracts, because they will strip the IP out and take it away from you if they at all can. And that's what I identify as the main risk with TV, is broadcasters knowing they've got the control and taking all your rights away from you. Another part that I front up, IP development. So we can get help for developing IP from media. We have done on several projects, including the one you can see there, which is our next show called Planets. And just so that I get a little break in talking, I'm going to play you the intro to this, which is hopefully going to get commissioned this year by either Disney or the BBC in the UK. Hopefully this plays. When we're developing shows, we now develop two types of shows, and only two. We took a decision. So we make cheaper shows that we can sell to a small number of territories and make our license fee back. These shows don't necessarily have to be toyetic. They can just be great things for TV. So low budget, and sometimes we try and make them wholesome so they involve children more. And I'll talk a bit more about that later. The other shows we make are going to be big wham-bam merchandising opportunities. What we've found over time is the shows that sit in the middle, that don't quite do either, tend to lose money because they're not, they're not merchandisable and they're too expensive to make their money back from TV. So we're always very careful about what camp each of our animations sits in. Is it going to be a £6 million production that we have to sell toys from and get toy partners involved in early, or is it going to be about £1 million and just be something that's a very good animation for the sake of showing it on TV? You saw there behind me something we spend more and more money on, which is R&D. In the UK, there's actually a thing called an R&D credit. So if you're developing software and developing something commercial you can sell to other people, you can gain some tax benefit from that. You can't double dip. You can't claim animation tax credit and R&D. So you have to think about what you're claiming. But we work more and more on making our systems quicker, more efficient, better for our animators to use, which saves time, which saves money. And as budgets are squeezed all the time, that's so important. The show you saw there is called Planets, and everyone always asks me, why are you doing it in 3D? Why are you doing it in Maya? Maya is what we trained in. We don't know anything else, so we decided to develop our own way of doing 2D in 3D, because it was going to be cheaper for us than completely retrain everyone in Cell Action or Toon Boom. So we got our technical guys to sit and develop these rigs and a special way of animating. We now can churn out animation much quicker than either of those other programs I just listed through doing it in this system, and most people would never know it's done in Maya. Once we've developed software to a certain point, and this is going to happen for the first time this year, we've rewritten some 3D storyboarding software. We're actually going to release that to the market, and that can help bring in tiny bits of extra revenue as well, selling your own software back to the market. Commercials. Commercials are even lower budget commercials now, because of the technology we've got, can be slicker and high end, and it's a really good opportunity for giving your staff something to direct, again, to get their artistic side across. They're usually short-term projects, so they can be really creative. This is something we did for the boat race. So work comes to us from many places, and we always like to keep pushing what we're doing. We are now getting much more into apps and VR. I think when people talk about apps, too often they're just rubbish versions of your show with a play button or one thing you can tap. So we're trying to get into it in a more in-depth way, really like emerging children into our worlds. We've just produced the first UK virtual reality pop video, and we are now doing our first animated short for Oculus Rift, which will have some interactivity, but basically it's going to be a beautifully animated story. We are always, when new technology comes to the forefront, the first thing everyone does is big spinny logos, because that's what looks the most impressive in 3D, or the logo spinning. And there's a lot of that going on in the UK, and we're not so interested in that. So we're doing some really nice character animated storytelling. We're also working with events company, and we're going to do a thing where you wear an Oculus Rift and you have a team of actors and you have a meal, and it's weird things like a bird will fly in and lay an egg on your plate, and you'll be able to see the bird fly in, then you'll be able to reach out and pick up the egg and eat it. It's just a crazy idea we've had, but we're getting some traction with it. It's going to be like a high cost experience. So they're all the things that we're trying to get into at the moment. What I want to talk about briefly, because it's important for your industry, is tax breaks and incentives and how you can build an industry together here in Poland. And I'm really pleased that since first meeting Polish producers a short while ago, I've seen you've set up an organisation, and you seem to be getting yourselves together as a unit, and that's the only way you're going to be able to change things with the government and with your industry. What you need to be careful of, it has to be more than just about getting tax credits and support. What I want to run through with you is the reasons why people come to the UK to animate, and I think Poland has to find its own story. You have got a story, but it's not for me to tell you what that is. But the reasons people come through the UK, and I'll try and be brief, because I don't necessarily want to try and convince you all to come to the UK. I think you should stay here and animate. Firstly, we're a really experienced industry. So from the 50s, we were one of the leading producers of animations, commercials, early films such as Animal Farm, Yellow Submarine, Watership Down in the 70s, and in the 80s we saw The Snowman, all very different styles. That's something the UK is very strong on from its advertising route. Who Framed Roger Rabbit, and shortly afterwards, The Unstoppable Rise of Aardman. So our historic strength has been there, and that got pushed through into children's, from Noggin the Nog, Clangers, Wombles, Danger Mouse, all these things that are being remade now. We've always had this sort of history that people from around the world that can see, and we always present to them as we've got this heritage in animation, so come and work with us. We've got experience, we've got the knowledge, the know-how. This knowledge and know-how means we can sell our content around the world, and that means the toys are going to fly off the shelves. And that's another thing that the UK has become leaders at. So we've constantly found TV hits that can be turned into worldwide brands. I'm not just talking about TV animation, online and gaming and immersive worlds. Moshi Monsters, launched out the UK, huge commercial successes. And so where TV revenues won't cover the cost of making your show, you have to get this right, and the UK constantly does. The other thing we have is a big support network. So here, this isn't even a full list. This is people who are supporting us from within the UK. There are obviously European partners that support us as well. Each of these people does something different. Some of them are more film-based, some of them more investment-based. Some are directly going out and targeting American companies to come and invest in the UK. But all these people help support our industry and So if you want to talk about tax credits, maybe you come to Animation UK. If you want investment for a big film, so Star Wars, why did the UK get Star Wars? They went and saw our Chancellor at and spoke to DCMS, and the Chancellor made sure it happened, and then he got to like have a photo opportunity with Darth Vader or something. But we get a lot of support that try and push our industry around the world. As well as the support for businesses, we have a lot of support for talent. So creative skill set, the government puts money in to develop talent within our companies. And here we see just a range of some of the universities. Creative skill set was set up when we got the animation tax credit because we quickly realized that we didn't have enough talent coming through the UK to meet the needs of the growing industry. So they set up creative skill set, and there's various schemes. For example, I can take trainees funded by creative skill set. I can set up courses. We're going to set up with our new storyboarding software a course to train people in that, and they will sometimes match fund it. So if I put in 50% of the money, they will give you 50% of the money. So
But how are they funded?
They are funded. It's complicated, but
Don't want to go too deep into that.
When we get a tax credit, we voluntarily, which means that I go around our industry and shame people into do it. We voluntarily give a very tiny proportion of our budget to skill set. The government then will match that funding as well as invest other funding. So long as they see our industry investing, the government keep investing. It was meant to last for 3 years after the tax credit. They've just renewed it for another 2. Because they can see how it's working. So that is partly funded by industry and then supported by the government. And that's just training and skills, again, across all of the things we now get animation tax credits for. So games, film, children's animation, and now orchestras, weirdly. So yeah, you can pick up some extra money for training. So before we'd have just paid for it all in-house. We had to do it because we didn't have enough staff, but now we just get 50% on that training, which is great. And it's not entry-level training. You can be training a director or producer on a film, very, very high-end. So long as there's training involved and you can prove that, you can access that money. As well as creative skill set, there's a thing called Next Gen. Again, it's not on there because it's quite new, but it's funded by the government. And it's a group of us that are funded to get next generation skills into schools from 7-year-olds right through to university. So it fills the gap up to university. Over the last few months, I've been helping write a course which children from 16 to 18 will do. And it's a course in computer games, animation, and special effects. So that by the time they leave school and go to university, they'll already have a complete base knowledge. They probably won't be good enough to employ, but when they go to university, they'll have the base knowledge. So their university, they will be able to produce much, much better work. So when they come out of university, they will be industry ready. Because the problem we have in the UK at the moment is that they're not coming out of the university as a high standard, as I would say some people from France and some of the other good European courses are producing. In England, they tend to do much more inward-focused arty projects, which is all well and good, but they don't necessarily get you a job or tell you how to tell you what television standard or film standard animation is. So there's a big support mechanism from the government in training as well as the tax credits. Tax credits, there's no interesting picture for tax, so you just have the words. The great thing about the UK tax credit is that it's guaranteed. Now, in other countries, they have funds, so we all apply for the media funding every year. That's a lottery. So when I'm doing a business plan to get my show made or doing a business plan to try and get investors on board, I can't put any of that stuff down as a guaranteed. The animation tax credit in the UK, I can put as a guaranteed. It's a deductible line item at the end, basically. 20% of your money is going to come back in at the end. So my show is 20% cheaper to make, so it has 20. I always look at it as it's got 20% more chance to get funded and make money. As well as that, the government has a thing called EIS and SEIS, which are investment vehicles. So rich individuals who want to avoid paying tax on some of their money, can invest into those, and animation is very suitable for that. Animation tends to have sort of a cycle of about 5 to 7 years as it makes money. These people who are investing in these schemes have to leave their money in there for 3 years. So there's great things our government are doing that makes it really attractive to invest in animation. As well as that, we have great broadcasters, and this is so important. There's 30 plus channels in the UK, and many of their European hubs are in London. So Disney, Nickelodeon, BBC, Milkshake, they all have their hubs in London. So I can walk 10 minutes up the road and knock on any of these people's doors to try and sell my animation to them. And that is, I would say, as equally important as having the tax credit, that we're based there and can go and see these people and speak to them on a regular basis, because a lot of our business is obviously based on relationships. Also, we're quite a good country to co-produce with. Because we were forced in a position where we had no work, because we had no tax credit, we had to learn how to do it. Like, I think we always begrudgingly did it, but talking to people in Europe, they all do it as well. They do it so well because they have to do it. So I think we're, because we're such strong storytellers in the UK, I think we're a great team to work with. And now we've got a tax credit, it just helps making other people's shows cheaper. So briefly, this is a list of things the UK's got. This is what I go out all around the world with the government, selling into people and telling people. Now, you maybe don't have some of these things, but you have your own story. So I go around with that slide as well. Great Britain, we're great. So you need to find an angle on Poland and what makes Poland great. You have a story to tell. You've collectively got to find the right message, both to your government and broadcasters, but even more importantly to the world. Animation is a world industry, and you've got to find that voice. I think in Poland they called the 60s the golden age of Polish animation, and then I think the 70s was like the silver age of Polish animation, and I don't know whether it went to like bronze and wood, and but the one thing that I do know is that the passion here is the same that it's always been for animation, and it's just how you get that across and how you can work to get these incentives and get your broadcasters commissioning and paying for content, paying for good children's and adult animation content. So this is us now. Our industry is so buoyant, so we actually have a problem now of holding on to staff, which we never had before. And we can't compete with all the Hollywood studios that are based in London making special effects. So we have to work differently. We have to work cleverer. On film, they work all hours, God sent, and weekends, and they don't get paid anything more for it. So we try and make our working environment better, and we really do try and do 9 till 5. It doesn't always work, but we try and do 9 till 5. And we try and make our staff feel part of the company, so we offer profit share and profit split. And we try and give our staff share options in our company when they've been around. So if we make money, they make money, and you can't really be fairer than that. We also try and give our animators real-life experiences. So we pay for them to do work and go on adventures around the world. For example, we made a show called Olive, which was all about getting into schools and working with schools for children in impoverished areas of the UK. Yes, there are impoverished areas in the UK. To give children who don't feel a worth themselves an opportunity to work on a show that'll be on telly. And then the credits at the end of the show don't have any of our names on it. It just has the names of all the kids that worked on it, because that's the way it should be. To run alongside that, we then started doing it with people around the world. So we sent people over to Ethiopia. I'm just going to show you a little bit of this. We sent some of our staff over to Ethiopia. It was a really nice experience for the 3 people we sent out, and they got over a week and a half to go and work. That wasn't one of them, in Ethiopia, that's a good school. There were some much more impoverished ones. And genuinely, all their work went in the backgrounds, and their work is now seen all around the world. And we left some equipment with them over there as well, so they can start doing animation. So that's another way we try and retrain staff, by offering them opportunities they wouldn't get for other people. And 3 or 4 times a year, we allow all our staff to make any films they want to. It started off that the owners of the company would vote on who'd got the best idea for a short, but that made our staff miserable. So now we let them decide what they want. So they all vote, and we get no say, which means that occasionally we end up with stuff stuff like this. And this is really the key to our success, is that we have all these different sides to our company. So when the advertising industry collapsed, when the financial markets collapsed several years ago, we had children's work, which is in our series production. That kept our company going. And then when we didn't have children's work, we had a lot of adverts, which kept our company going. And all of them feed into each other. The long-running series means we get a bigger render farm, which we pay for over those series, which means that our creative services can try and do higher-end work, and we've got a render farm for it. The money that we make from creative services, because that's the higher ticket price item, I can spend developing series, and when we've made the series, they then go into series productions. We've got this really lovely loop of stuff going on, which means that we're always busy, we can hold on to our staff, and really grow our business. The other slide that's really important to me, I'm just going to skip through these, but I think this is the most important thing. Oh, I went past it. How do I go back? Well, basically, it was saying that do work that you love. Always, if you can do work that you love and it makes you money, that's the most important thing. And if you're retaining some IP in those things, then that's excellent, because you've bought a ticket out of that lottery. And one day, one of our shows will catch fire around the world, and one day I will make a lot of money. But until then, I'm just having fun doing what I'm doing and making a bit of money, getting to come to places like this and talk to you guys.
Yeah, as you mentioned, we are at the beginning of a process like that here in Poland. Maybe just to give you an idea, all the members of the Association of Animation Producers, could you raise your hands to see if anybody's... So there's a few of the producers here, and we started last year. Actually, we founded this association. Maybe you could say a few words about how Animation UK started. I mean, you all kind of realized, wow, we have a problem. Nobody wants to produce here. We should all meet and have a beer and talk and start collaborating. Or how did you motivate the industry to get together and to go into one direction together?
It was quite difficult, but from a personal point of view, we'd lost out on 2 big jobs to Ireland, where they said that our budget was lower. They wanted to work with us. Our pitch was better, but by the time you take off their £1 million, they got £1 million tax credit. They were cheaper than us, and their investors would only head where it was cheaper. So we lost 2 big jobs, and we were like, this isn't sustainable as a company. We're not going to pick up any jobs. So what do? Do we move somewhere else? And so we started speaking to the rest of the industry. I did my own report, so I looked into all the incentives around the world. I looked at where we were now and our history, and I produced this document that was about 5 pages long. I got our local MP to get me to meet with the head of the DCMS, who is like the culture, media and sport. And I showed him my little report, which was just printed and really badly bound. And he said, I believe what you're saying, and you're probably right, but come back to me when you've got more than answers written on the back of a fag packet. So he didn't like my little report. It wasn't very professional. I think he thought I'd just go away. But with him saying, we will genuinely consider it if you come back with something, I absolutely held him to it. So I went to our industry, again with our MP, who said he would push it in Parliament for us. And I managed to convince, it was about 20, 25 companies to all put a small amount of money, whatever they could afford, into getting an economic report done. That report was the thing that I then went back to the government with, who by that time had changed, but I could still go back in to see the right people. And that was the start of everything, really, getting that report together. You can have as much enthusiasm as you want, but if you haven't got like an economic document, and the great thing about animation compared with live action kids, animation can sell around the world. You can make a fortune on it. All I had to do for the treasury, so you need to convince the people that culturally it's right, and you need to convince the people that the money's right. So all I did was take in like Peppa Pig toy, and you can say, Peppa Pig, this toy, this brand has sold more than all the film industry put together. This one small animation has sold more than the entire live-action film industry put together this year. And the games did the same. The game said this one game, which was Grand Theft Auto, made in Scotland, made more money in 3 days than your entire film. And so they see the film industry as this big thing they can sell around the world because it's celebrities. But actually, in terms of money, you can really show the benefits of animation if you get it right. So selling the 2 things, money and mostly for children. Who doesn't want to do things for children? Do you like children? Let's do things for children, and you can make money. It's a really good argument, and it's quite a convincing argument to argue against.
Can you say something about the time process? Like how many years of work did you invest until it?
Everyone seems to think it happened really quickly, but because I was on my own to start off with, putting together that initial report and getting in to see the first MP took at least a year. From then, collecting the money took to pay for the report took about another 6 months of me going around with a begging bowl. And then the report itself took about 6 months. So that was 2 years. That went in about, I started sending that to MPs and taking it in about 2010. In 2011, it was announced that it will probably get through the budget. And then in 2012, it came in. So it's at least 5 or 6 years. But since the very first email I sent anyone, I think I sent the first email in 2007, 2008. So it's a long process, and actually the benefit in money to the government won't have played out yet. So the first things that came, 2-year process for making an animated show, let's say. So they started in 2012. They went on air last year. And so the government will see that our industry is growing, but the money from the merchandising won't come in for another 2 years. So it'll be probably 10 years until the government actually starts seeing the full benefit of where we started. So it's a long time, but it was well worth doing. I think maybe we're slightly different because we have all these things going on constantly. We're not under the same pressure as people. There are companies in the UK that only produce children's programs. So they're under a constant pressure to come up with the next idea and the next idea and the next idea that they can try and pitch in and sell. I've got nothing against it, but I don't like that process because what it's doing is doing that thing of like brainstorming of like, oh God, we've got to have an idea now. Who's got an idea? We've got to do an idea, which I don't find very creative. So we're in the fortunate position because we've got all this stuff going on. If someone comes to us with a good idea internally, for example, Planets, the show there was a group of staff who were working on commercials, came to us and said, we've got this idea. We liked it and we pushed forward with that. So if people come to us with ideas, we tend to work with them and try and look at how they want to work to produce their idea. Occasionally, we've just got into buying the rights to books and films, and we've got a couple of those going through. So we can develop in any number of ways. One thing we've had to get really good at doing, though, is, again, compartmentalizing that development, because we used to kind of go, oh, we'll develop it when we're in downtime, or we'll develop it when we've got free staff. And consequently, you never get free staff, or you get like one day here and one day there, and you can't develop properly because everything goes on hold. So what we do is when we've got an idea, we put a budget down and we put a schedule down, and again, we just treat it as a proper job, and it's not allowed to be shifted. And so for Planets, for example, we had 10 weeks before Cartoon Forum. We pressed go and said, you've got 10 weeks to make everything we need for Cartoon Forum. And it was mad and crazy, but we gave them enough resources to do it. We also make sure, I think in development it's important, we try not to sell against ourselves. So for example, we are just making a big show called Digby Dragon, which will preschool, which will go out all around the world. So that was preschool. We then decided, right, we're not going to do any more preschool for a while. So Planets was a little bit older, and the next thing we do will be adult animated film, try and sell it. So we're always very careful. We don't sell against ourselves, but essentially good ideas can come from anywhere, and it's about giving the people with the ideas the ability to go out and kind of run with it. Like I say, I hate this thing of like interfering in other people's creativity, and now we're having to work, you're videoing this, I've got to be careful what I say, now we're working with Disney and the BBC. The joy of the show Planet is that they're just these stupid round things floating around. We called them planets because planets are round, but they could be tennis balls or whatever. It was meant to be very Monty Python, like things whiz in, whiz out. And now that we're working with broadcasters, they're getting awfully worried about a nice storyline and what's the character's emotional journey. You know, we had, you know, and that I find that really frustrating because they saw the show as it was, and they now want this really like cute plinky plonky story. We just want things coming on them. The character the kids like the most, even though it's only for 3 seconds, was the Fire Planet, who just comes in and is screaming he's on fire, and they all loved it, and they weren't worried about whether he had a nice emotional journey. They just enjoy the madness. But so when we're developing internally, we just try as much as possible to let people run with it, because as much as anything else, if our other stuff is making money and we're doing these shorts and pitching as an exercise in giving our staff something good and creative to do, then let them be creative and trust them to do it, and try not to get in their way. I think try not to get in the way of creativity.
You said quite a lot about the relation within the company, within the staff members, and it seems like you make a lot of effort to really have the people identify themselves as part of the company. They can get shares of the profits and so on. You did this staff survey, but how does it look like practically? I mean, you're 120 people. Do you have like a meeting once a week with everybody, or what does the internal relationship look like in Blue Zoo?
It gets harder and harder. Like, I mean, I love the company most in terms of people. When we were about 30 people, you knew everyone. We'd go out and we'd play football, and we'd all, it was a lovely, lovely atmosphere. And once we're now split over 3 floors. One floor is services, and then each floor has like a dedicated project. One at the moment's Miffy. One is the end of Tree Futon, beginning of Digby. And those teams tend to get really close-knit, and services is quite close-knit. But it's much harder for us to all come together. We try and we have a big party a couple of times a year, summer party, a winter party. We do animation quizzes about 4 times a year. We encourage people to go and eat their lunch on different floors. But it is a struggle, and I have to say some of the joy when you're management. Some of the people don't know I'm management, probably because of how I dress. And some people I don't know work for me. I accuse. Well, someone came in. I was like, "Excuse me, what are you doing here?" As they were like going through a drawer. They're like, "I've worked here for 3 weeks." I was like, "All right, carry on. Sorry." So it does get more difficult. And all you can do is you'll do your best. And one thing we actually found is that people have made really, really good friends. So in our staff survey, which actually
in that survey, what did you ask them?
Everything from sort of job satisfaction to their views on the future. We learned that animators, even if they're in full-time employment with us, don't feel secure in their jobs with us, which is crazy, because some of them have been with us like 10 years. But I think it's more a reflection on the industry in general that people feel nervous. It was quite patronizing. Like, we got the results back in smiley faces or sad faces. Yeah, I was thinking, like someone had texted it to you. So we got smiley faces for most of it. We got sad faces for how much we're paying people, which we were really gutted about, because we really do try and give people enough money, and with the share scheme and everything, we try and be as fair as possible. But actually, the people who ran the survey said if everyone had put smiley faces for money, you'd know you were paying them too much. So don't be too. Everyone's always going to want more money. But the really interesting thing that came out of it for us is that there are a lot of people who just want to do it for the sake of doing art and kind of accept their salaries. And they run their own things now, like someone's organised life drawing. They come to us and say, "Can we do life drawing?" "Yeah, we'll pay for it." So there's about 20 of them do life drawing every week. There's another little group who do, they call it the sculpt test. Once a week, they all say, "Right, this week we're going to sculpt food." So like 10 of them go away and sculpt a load of crazy food creatures, and then the next week it can be underwater, and they all go. And they do that off their own back and in their own time, because they want to be creative, and they want more of that, but they want more money, and it is a really difficult balancing act. But they do feel loved, and they do, that's one thing that came across.
And do you think you have now reached a critical number of people in the company, or how big do you think you will grow in the next 5 to 10 years?
I don't think we'll grow much more. If we do a film, I think we could go up to about 180, and I don't think I'd want to go more than that, because it's not about we're not ambitious to do more and more work. It's just making sure that you've got the people in the right places to keep the quality high. And at the moment, I don't think we have enough people that would want to put themselves in the position of running all these projects and driving them forwards. And especially if we're talking about doing more of our own IP, why not just do one piece of really, really good IP and really invest everything in that, rather than trying to do sort of 20 and just try and bring in more and more money. I've seen that model again in Asia quite a lot, where they just go massive, and then 2 weeks later they don't exist, and then another place pops up with 600 people, all seem to be just training on jobs. I really don't like that. It is an art. I think it is an art business, and it needs to kind of be treated as such, and it needs to be treated with real care. I don't just want it to turn into a business.
I've got a question regarding the beginning of your company. How did you advertise your services during the first few years?
Yeah, I mean, as I said, like, we were so lucky to get that first job, and it really did carry us. Once that went away, it went away after about 2 years, and there were still 4 of us at that point. And then it really, it honestly was just getting every animation directory, every TV broadcast, every big company that were producing corporate videos, and cold calling them every single day. We'd aim to do about 100 each, and we'd set ourselves targets for how many people we could send show reels to. So in our third year, it was hours and hours of cold calling, going to MIP and just trying to get meetings, knocking on doors, getting them slammed in our faces. And we worked out, well, this is quite interesting. So the 3 lads, when we cold called, we'd call 100 people, and we would get about 5 people who'd say they'd have a show reel. Of that, about 0.2% would ever come back to us with any sort of job offer. When Nicola, the girl, called people, she would get about 50% of people ask for a show reel, and she seemed to get meetings with them, which I think showed at the time how male-dominated our industry was, and the fact that a girl phoned up. Okay, you know, it was madness, but we got a lot more jobs through her, which, you know, was silly, but we all had to do it. We all committed, and we all walked the streets, and we got some really strange jobs making websites for banks. And you know, when the work wasn't there, you know, that's the hardest we ever worked, and those days felt awful. But we learned quite quickly that you could never sort of rely on just what you're doing now. And word of mouth is so important. As soon as we got nominated for that BAFTA with Blue Cow, all of a sudden Disney would speak to us, all of a sudden Nickelodeon would speak to us, even though it wasn't a piece of work that we were particularly proud of, because we had to make them so quickly and churn them out, and they were cheap. But it's that thing, if you've done something, so we'd done Blue Cow, and we had a phone call from someone who was trying to make a very cheap advert, and went, "We've seen you can animate a blue cow. Could you animate a blue fish?" I was like, "Oh, yeah." So, but that's, you know, sometimes that's what it is. And ironically, we didn't set out just to do children's work, but that's the path that kind of naturally presented once you've done your first thing in children's. And we've actually fought against it for several years. We completely rebranded our services side, and we called it Rebel, and we tried to make it all like cool and older. But everything sort of points back to Blue Zoo, so people sort of found you out. And they don't realize, actually, once you can animate a character, yeah, we can do a really dark character, which is another reason that we're doing some of those shorts, which are just gross and silly and adult and stuff like that, because we want to try and pull ourselves away from just being preschool. But just really hard. There's no easy answer. Really, really hard work. There wasn't social media back then. It might be a bit easier nowadays, but yeah, there was no social media, nothing like that. So it was just letters, emails, and knocking on doors, which is hellish.